welcome to the book club. Those of you who might be new to the book club and attending today might find it hard to believe that we are actually 20 years old. I think that's quite a long number of years to be fully functioning non-stop all along. Since the lockdown happened, we've been meeting every week. So every Sunday we have a discussion, and we are now almost at the 100 mark, just a couple of numbers short of 100. So all this makes me feel very, very happy, very encouraged. And I know that this will go on. We have had wonderful discussions. We've had books, we've had films, we have had non-fiction, fiction, poetry, plays, you name it, we have had it. And today also we have a very interesting book to be reviewed. This may be the first Sri Lankan author that we are picking up. So we have Anuk Arudpragasam's book, A Passage North, being presented by Mukul Ahmad. Now, Mukul has presented several times, and I'm always impressed with the way she researches her work and presents it with a great deal of clarity. So she's a very precious member of our club. And well, she has an MPhil in history from Delhi University. I'm very partial to Delhi University, by the way. So a degree from Delhi means a lot to me. So that's terrific. And she also has a diploma in gender studies. And she teaches even now, she does research, she takes up projects. So she's very much in the swim. Mukul, over to you. Tell us about this book.
Mo, why don't you ask everyone to switch off their mic?
Okay, everybody, can I please ask you to switch off your mics now so that Mukul is the only one heard. You're also welcome to switch off your videos, as I shall.
Right. May I begin?
Yes, please. Over to you, Mukul.
Okay. So as Mohini said, well, welcome everybody. The author is Anuk Arudpragasam, and the name of the book is A Passage North. Okay, this novel is tragic and powerful, nuanced and detailed. It's very difficult to review and very absorbing to read. That's how I summed it up. It is the story of a young Tamilian man, about 30 maybe, who leaves Delhi after his studies at the JNU and moves back to Colombo, where he has his mother and grandmother. That is normally the setup we are used to even in India. His father, who was a bank official there, was killed in a bomb blast during the Civil War years. So he lives with them and he watches his grandmother, who's 85, she's called Appamma, and she is slowly deteriorating, both physically and mentally. So he decides that she should have some companion. In the northeast, which is the Tamil area of Sri Lanka, in a mental asylum's ward, he finds a lady called Rani. He asks the doctor about her because she just seems to be sitting still. And the doctor said that she has lost 2 sons to the war and one right in front of her. As they were running away, she was holding his hand. He was a young boy, maybe 13, 14, and the shrapnel hit him and he died. Since then, she has become very quiet, just sits on her own. And the doctor says that he'll talk to her and get back to her. But it was a good idea, the doctor said, because she needed to get out of there and she needed to occupy herself with something else. Our hero, his name is Krishan, goes back to Colombo and he waits for the doctor's call. He gets the call from the doctor and says, this lady, Rani is her name, is quite willing to come. So she's brought from maybe Jaffna, maybe somewhere in the northeast, to Colombo, to their house. And the 2 women seem to get on very well. A very elderly woman, about 85, and middle-aged Rani. Rani lives in the Northeast with her daughter and two granddaughters, small ones, whom she is very fond of. So she frequently makes trips to the Northeast. So this is the setup. The story begins when Rani had once visited or was on a visit home, and Krishan, our hero, gets a call. The call is from Rani's daughter, informing him and his family that Rani had fallen into a well the previous day and had died. She seemed completely hale and hearty. What happened? Krishan couldn't ask her anything. He was too astonished. The lady didn't say anything more. He didn't even know her much. And he puts down the phone. He wonders whether he should go and tell his grandmother, his mother, but he doesn't. He goes to his computer and there he finds an email from his girlfriend. Maybe you can call her his ex-girlfriend, Anjum, from India. Anjum never wrote to him, or rather seldom did, because they had decided to part ways. And there was an email from her. So he starts reading between the lines. What is this email for? Does she want to rejuvenate our relationship? What is it? So he reads it again and again, but realizes that it's just a keep in touch, cool kind of mail from her. So this is the background. And these are the two pieces of news that our hero, Krishan, is grappling with that day. The story begins with a journey of Krishan traveling to the Northeast to attend the funeral of Rani. So a passage north is actually his travel to the north. And it's not a very short journey. It's about 7 hours. From there, he would have to take a bus, 2 buses rather, and then he would have to walk. So all the thoughts that come to him on his journey, his thoughts about Rani primarily, what she had been through, his thoughts about his grandmother and how she was fading, his thoughts about himself, what he did and achieved in the JNU in Delhi, and now that he was back, what was the purpose for him? So these things actually occupied his thoughts. He also felt a little sense of shame and guilt because he was quite full of the war, the news of the war, and he'd never participated in it. So he felt that he was escaping something, and he was looking at his own situation and the incongruity, as he says, between what was going on inside him and the environment that he occupied. So that was how his thoughts went over the journey. The first thing that I liked about this book was that there were just 3 main characters: grandmother Appamma, Rani, her caregiver, and Krishan, our hero. It could be told in first person, the way it is narrated, but it's not told in first person. And I sort of wondered why, but it could really well be in first person. So it is the story of love, longing, yearning for something unfulfilled, the trouble of dealing with the present and the environment around that person, and of wanting something else all the time and not knowing how to get it. It's a kind of story of the human condition. This is a very serious book. So if you're looking for light reading, that it isn't so. But in the book, I did find 2 amusing references. One was something in Colombo called Visa Temple. And I said, what is this? So initially, when people built it, they went there to pray to get visas for the West. And the first lot of people who prayed got their visas. So the name stuck, Visa Temple. And so people used to come there with a lot of hope and bow and pray and make offerings. And the second was the LTT girls whom he met. They used to wear cyanide capsules, as you know. And he says he wore them as if they were heirlooms and they didn't want to part with them. He has made a very pertinent observation about Delhi. He says, the men look at women as if it's their entitlement. And this is what he told his girlfriend too. And she was amused. And she said, yes, but in other parts of India, things are not so bad. And his romantic involvement with Anjum. Anjum was a colleague of his, somebody he met there. She was an activist actually. And she worked in the Jharkhand. She belonged to Karnataka. They got on very well. They were very close to each other. And our hero kept feeling that she was holding back something, though they had a complete relationship, whether it was physical or whether they shared films or went to Bombay together, whatever. But he felt there was something that she was holding back. And then on the last journey, before he left to come back home to Colombo, she points him to a purpose. She kind of felt that he was investing too much in her, such a qualified man, and he needs a purpose for himself. She didn't say so, but he got that impression. And then he says, I left her without sadness and without desperation. That is the kind of way he would have left her otherwise, yearning again to be with her. So in one sense, he had found a purpose for himself, and she was a catalyst to help him find the purpose. His grandmother's condition is described in absolutely acute and wonderful detail. He says before she went to London, she had a brother there, a younger brother. And she liked to go to him, not just because he was in London, because she felt he was something who was entirely her own. Because in the house, she had a daughter-in-law. So by relationship, the daughter-in-law was not entirely her own. So here she felt, my brother wants me. He's been calling me. He's been sending tickets. So now I will go to him. So before she went, she was very enthusiastic, packed, took all her pickles, her masalas, and all sorts of things, gave orders, and everything was put together very easily. And he says of her, she fought to remain in the small, self-contained space that was her world. There was something worthy of admiration in this fierce, humble loyalty to life that she had. As I said, her entire aging process is described with great deal of detail, which she denied, of course. She used to fall asleep, so that was part of it, but she said, no, I never fall asleep just like that. I sleep only in the night. Her childish longing for her brother, and also the scar that was post-leg surgery that she showed off to everybody who came to visit her post-operation. So these were some of the childish things, also indicative of age, but she denied them completely. Her trip to London to visit her brother, she had looked forward to a great deal, but she came back hastily. And it has been described in a very poignant manner. She had returned much earlier than anticipated, much thinner. Her clothes just hung on her body. There was a glazed and uncomprehending look in her eyes, and she seemed disoriented and completely devoid of recognition. The author has put this very beautifully. He says, Krishan couldn't help feeling that his grandmother had chosen to abandon her lucidity on purpose upon recognizing them that day at the airport. The them is he and his mother. Because she sensed in that moment that remaining conscious would mean accepting powerlessness of her situation, and decided in some interior part of herself that it was preferable for her from then on to be absent. So he has really put it together very beautifully and comprised it and presented it to us just as it is. Then discussing Rani. Rani's background, we know she lost 2 sons to the war. One had joined the Tigers, and the other son was about 13 or 14. And when shelling started, she held his hand and she started running away to a safer place to take shelter. But a shrapnel hit his shoulder and he fell. And what made her feel terrible was that she couldn't stop there to pick him up to attend to his wounds because bombs started falling. There was firing all around. So that image of him lying on the ground and her not helping him, and also of her other son whose whereabouts she knew nothing about, those remained constantly in her mind. So it was as if she was trapped in her mind. And she was forced to spend many long stretches of time by herself in her home, trapped in her own mind. It was not possible for her to move on. Her mind had become the only space where she could meet her sons freely. The author informs us. He summed up the relationship between the two of them very beautifully. Grandmother was someone who was rapidly aging, who was fighting to remain in this world and fighting to remain relevant. And Rani was an invisibly wounded middle-aged woman who didn't seem to care whether she left or stayed in this world. I thought it was very beautifully put together. The two women laughed a great deal. They watched Tamil films from India. They also discussed those Tamil films and commented on them. And in the evenings, when Krishan, whose room was opposite their room, came to visit them, they would tell him all about them and ask him how his day had been. He liked Rani very much. He also asked about her two little granddaughters, and it was only at that time that her eyes lit up. She would talk about them endlessly. She seemed a little reserved about her daughter, but it did seem that she was fond of her. And she was happy that her son-in-law was a very nice man, and she said that he took good care of her. Did she fall in the well by design, by accident? What happened, he wondered, but he didn't have the heart to ask the daughter. So it is this fine balance between compassion and objectivity that, according to me, enriches the quality of the narration. It is not an objectivity that is extremely clinical, though the observations are both clinical and precise. The author stands outside, just enough to observe it all, because it's a story of his people and his home, told in words that makes the reader feel, and at least I felt that, this is how I would have liked to express my thoughts, exactly like this. This is because the observations are so minute, so detailed, and so true. And I asked myself, how does he know this? How does he feel like this? How does he know the minds of women? Because if you now see, there are only women around him. There is no male character. Whether it is Appamma, whether it is Rani, or his mother, or Anjum, there is no female character. And what I thought was simply splendid was the accuracy with which he is able to analyze the mind of women. And I found it just simply fascinating. And for that, I think you have to really read the book. Now, one of the drawbacks that I found was that the sentences are too long, and I had to read and reread them to see if there were irrelevant words or words that were just put there for embellishment. But I didn't. I failed to find anything like that. All the words were completely relevant. So for me, to have something relevant, yet so long, so explained in so much detail, and carrying weight throughout and carrying meaning throughout was splendid, was really a wonderful job, because I always feel that if you become very verbose and keep on using more and more words, somewhere you tend to go off the point. Either you repeat yourself or you stop making sense. But that was not the case. And I found that absolutely wonderful. The second thing I would have liked was that the text be broken up into paragraphs. If I may show you, let's look at, yeah, just any page. If you can see, there are hardly any paragraphs, hardly. And therefore it makes difficult reading in the sense that you just turn a page and you see, oh, just words, 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 words. But both these things don't take away from the merit of the narration, is what I felt. And you have to read each word. Each word carries equal weight. It's not something that you can just skip. On Krishan's long and meditative journey to attend Rani's funeral, Krishan recalls the Sanskrit poem he had read in Delhi called Meghdut. It's a poem of yearning, and it seemed to fit in very well with the yearning of the three characters here, as I saw it. Grandmother yearns to become independent of her dependency on her daughter-in-law. Krishan yearns to find a purpose and to get rid of his own shame and guilt. His shame and guilt for having heard about the war, heard that so many of his own people were dying, but not coming back to participate in it, and sitting somewhere far away and just going through blogs and videos and BBC and trying to catch up with the war. And Rani yearns to move to a world where this world would not trouble her. So this concept of yearning is something that I said to you before also. Love, longing, yearning is extreme desire to be somewhere different from where you are. I mean, the three characters are at that moment, not being able to know how to get there. So that is what, if you remember initially, I said is the human condition. I want something, but I'm not able to get it. And therefore the helplessness about the entire situation. Now, grandmother, as I said, as we find out, grandmother is unable to become independent of her granddaughter. In fact, as the author informs us, she chooses to be absent from everything, and thereby acknowledging neither her defeat nor the need for her daughter-in-law. But this need for the daughter-in-law becomes even more now that Rani has died. But she chooses not to think about it. She just chooses to be absent. Rani has fulfilled her yearning, whether by accident or by design. She dies, thereby reconciling her two worlds, which she was unable to do while she was alive. The author points out to the fallout of war in ways that we have only heard but not experienced. He points out to how differently war affects different people around, especially a mother in this case. She yearned to die. She was fated to die because she yearned for it. That was her only release. So it's quite a different case from grandmother, who fought to be in this world, and Rani, who fought to go away, but she didn't know how, and grandmother also didn't know how to go away. It had affected her so much, Rani, I mean, that she wasn't able to come to terms with that understanding that her two sons were not there. So she receded into her mind, into those spaces where she could just be with her sons. And therefore, all the treatment that she got in the mental hospital in the Northeast, it didn't come to very much. She even got electric shocks, but it didn't result in anything. Krishan saw that when she was back home, she seemed happy, back with them. She seemed happy on the surface. But sometimes she just would go off in a daze, in the sense that she was not there. One day, when Krishan's mother had called her to help her to do some cutting of vegetables, which his mother would ask her to do in the evenings, because her mother was a working woman and she would be working the whole day. She had her back to Rani, and Rani was cutting some vegetables. So the mother kept saying something to her, but she got no response. And she turned, and as she turned, she screamed loudly. What did she see? She saw that Rani had cut a large piece of her flesh while chopping those vegetables. Her finger was bleeding, her thumb was bleeding profusely. She was only holding it up. She wasn't shouting, she wasn't screaming. In fact, she wasn't reacting at all. Her face was just numb, lifeless, her eyes were lifeless, and she was holding a bleeding finger, a bleeding thumb. And then his mother goes and shakes her. She sees that flesh. Rani sees it too. She comes back to the present. But she doesn't scream or she doesn't do anything. And the mother screams for Krishan. He comes down. They bandage it. They take her to the doctor. And still, she's very still, absolutely still. Was she associating it with the blood that she saw there? So much of the blood that she's seen spilt in the Northeast? Was it triggering some kind of memory in her? Why did she suddenly go off during chopping vegetables? Why did she do that? We don't find an answer, but what I have said is a possible answer. For Krishan, as I said, working among those affected by the war seemed to be the direction that he took for himself. And as I said, his girlfriend was instrumental in setting him free to find this path for him. And he felt that leaving her, he did experience a kind of elation, a kind of freedom, and a kind of resting of his guilt. So maybe that was something that that was something that he was also destined to, perhaps. And he was happy that he didn't yearn for Anjum like she didn't probably for him. So kind of they were on the same wavelength. As the train moves north, and these thoughts are coming to him in the train. As the train moves north, not jerkily, but slowly with the repetitive movements of the wheels, so do his thoughts, one leading to another, and more thoughts arising out of them. So you will see as you read this interspersed, the present, as Krishan sees it, say his grandmother and her condition, and what that triggers in him. So from there, he'd go off to the thoughts, and those thoughts would generate more thoughts. Then his thoughts of Rani, and that would trigger something. Then his thoughts of her daughter and the grandchildren, though he didn't know them, and that would trigger something else. And this is how he traveled those 7 hours to go to her village. The strength of the book is not on what is said, because on the face of it, it is a very simple story of 2 people with a kind of psychological problem and Krishan himself in search of something. So it is, on the face of it, it seems a very simple story. So it is not what is said, but how it is said. And that is what makes the book great. It has very powerful imagery. There is a beautiful description of the sea waves, how the water unfurled itself so softly across the gentle slopes of the beach, how it swept over the smooth, polished sand with such tenderness, and just as it was losing all its momentum, it would pause as if taking a breath in a last brief embrace of the earth, clasping the land for as long as it could before drawing back with a sigh into the sea. So graceful. So these are the imageries, and these are the very beautiful words of which the book is meant, of which the book is full of. So people who feel that, this is not something I'd like to read, I want to read hard facts, I want to read a story, then I'm afraid this is not the kind of book for such people. Now, Krishan goes north. He reaches her village, as I said, after getting off the train, taking a bus, and then walking to the village. And in the village, he generally follows those people whom he asks and finds were going for the funeral. And that leads him to the house. The room where the body was kept was packed with people, absolutely packed. And as he was walking, he said that it was a place of vast remoteness, undiscoverable on any map and untouched by any history. A place he felt at the same time somehow familiar, as though he'd walked through it in a dream or in a past life. Now, in Rani's house, as I said, it was packed with mourners surrounding the body. The lamentation bound him to other mourners in the small and crowded place. Here he had been overwhelmed by emotion, but once out into the open, forced into the wider relief, into a contrast with the world's experience, expansiveness, and deprived of shared emotion with the other mourners that united him with them, he began returning to his own thoughts and his own identity. So this was just a brief way in which he describes that what he felt when he was packed there with others and what he felt when he came out and he had that space to stand by himself. There is a very, very detailed explanation of the funeral ceremony itself. And it's very elaborate and probably meets with some of the Hindu ceremonies in the South. It's similar, yeah, but there are some differences, as every community has them. Krishan had never witnessed a ceremony in the North or anywhere else. He had only been for very sober ceremonies in Colombo, funeral ceremonies, I mean. This lamentation and this crying and breast beating by the women, he had not seen before. As a result, he talks of the meaning of the loud wailing of the women mourners and its effect on the relatives of the dead. I call it a cathartic experience, the collecting of the ashes after the cremation, the urn as a symbol of the materially reduced body treated with reverence, a photograph of the dead as a continued symbol, the need for the past to be kept alive, even when the present takes precedence. The role of memory, sometimes selective, in all of this. So a lot of thought goes into him while he's looking at all this, because here he's really an observer. As he was walking, or as he was in the train also, he was thinking about the bulldozing of the graves of the Tamil men captured by the tigers, especially the tigers in the Northeast, captured by the army. And they removed in one stroke all evidence of their ever having lived or the circumstances in which they died. The tigers, as you perhaps know, or I didn't know, I learned that they buried their people, only the tigers. Otherwise, everybody else, the Tamils, like all Hindus, a majority of the Hindus, cremated their dead. And he felt that this bulldozing and setting up new things in that area, what must it have done to the relatives? These are some of the things that went on in his mind. And finally, as he saw Rani's body burning, he wondered if there was any trace of memory or consciousness left in her, both memory and consciousness having played such a big part in her life. And he knew that this too would be extinguished. He wondered if this was what Rani had, during her time in Colombo with them, secretly desired, the complete dissolution of her thoughts and feelings and the extinction of consciousness that she would never hope to achieve through sleep. Her mode of existence in this world was that of a ghost, says the author. The details of Rani's body burning are among some of the most vivid in the book. He felt that he could hear the fire nearing her, hissing and spluttering as it spread. Listening to these sounds, he suddenly felt anxious. It bothered him that Rani remained silent as the flames surrounded her body, and that he himself stood there doing nothing, even though nothing could be done. He thought about her retina, burning, curling up, and with it all the images that had been imprinted there over the course of Rani's lifetime. Images of beauty and of violence that had been superimposed over everything else that she saw. So these are some of the very beautiful images that the author creates for us. As he walked back from the cremation ground, he wondered what had brought him to this place. What power on earth had dragged him to a place so far removed from his home and so far removed from the JNU in Delhi that he knew? Why did he leave that life that he knew in India to come to this place where he'd actually never lived? It had never even figured in his life as he grew up. And he wondered what movements of fate had led to this seemingly accidental encounter with Rani in a hospital ward, and her death 2 days ago that had brought him here for her cremation. And he decided that this was nothing else but destiny or fate, that you might call it. And it was also, he felt, his guilt that was pulling him in that direction. Rani's vividly painful longing contained both the particularity of desire and the directionlessness of yearning, the knowledge of what exactly she needed, and the knowledge also that it could no longer be found. And absolutely finally, the author says, Kishan watched as the scarlet glow of the fire grew brighter in the darkening evening, as the air around it warped with strange clarity. He watched as the substantiality of human life was transmuted into something like a mirage, a hallucination, or a vision, which was all that was left of it, and into thick black clouds of smoke billowing up into the sky, thinning as they rose, and then disappearing into the evening. A message from this world into the other that would never be received. It is lines such as these that drew me to the book, where the words were loaded with imagery and meaning, beauty and strength. Thank you. This book was shortlisted for the Booker Prize of 2021. It didn't make it, but I can see now why it was shortlisted. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. You said it so well, completely lost in thought about the book and all that. It worked out very well. Hey guys,
Yes,
everyone.
it seems really beautiful, Mukul.
Thank you, Mohini.
Beautifully presented, a beautiful book, beautifully presented. I mean, the words thoughtful, ruminative, introspective come to mind.
Yeah, and Mohini, just one thing, I hadn't read any review of this book, okay? I didn't want to read any review. So there were excerpts from what the author has said, which I used to highlight what I felt about the book, but I didn't take any review.
Yeah, but I'm so glad that you read out lines from the book.
Yes, I did. They were necessary.
The flavor of the book. So as you said, now, if people are looking for a sort of story, with many twists and turns and action and all that, this is not it.
No,
not memory and all that. But I have a feeling, I think that this book would be to the taste of many of our members.
I hope so.
I think so, because after all, aren't we an introspective lot? I think we are. I do think.
Yeah. And Mohini, if you're going to ask any questions of the audience, I mean, they are as entitled to give the answer, because I have no final word on this. I've presented it as best as I understood. And if somebody has another take, for example, just one point, just one point. Krishan, why is he feeling so much guilt and shame? So if somebody, while I was narrating, felt something more in it, has read something more, absolutely quite free to do that anywhere else. Because
Yes, so the forum is open. Folks come.
And Mukul, definitely there will be a lot of questions. People felt, I felt the whole book.
okay, you
Yes.
felt
Book
the
of
book.
discovery,
Wonderful.
something of discovery that goes on into people's lives and trying to understand what's happening around in the world of ours.
Yeah.
I think Suchitra Sonalka is here after quite some time. Suchitra, are you there or are you closed out?
Yeah.
Suchitra,
Yeah,
why don't you ask
yeah.
your...
She has raised her
Yeah,
hand.
Mukul, beautifully presented, Mukul. You really did a really good job.
Thank you.
Actually, I just want to say something. I feel that there are a lot of books and there's a lot of literature, movies on people who have suffered in the war, who've gone through the trauma, and how they have gone through those difficult times. But I wonder if there is any literature that depicts the lives of the war survivors. How they have overcome
Absolutely.
it, and
Absolutely.
how they have got integrated into a normal life. But because I feel that it's very important, just as to record history and to record all the wars and how people have suffered the wars and what the psychological trauma that they've gone through, to also record the stories of war survivors and how
Yes.
they have, in spite of what they've gone through, how they've integrated into normal life. So, I mean, I really, I haven't come, I wonder if there is enough literature on these
I
kind of
really
stories.
wouldn't know. I'm sure there is, but I haven't any idea. That's not
Yeah.
something
There is. I mean, I know
Can I
that.
come into this? Suchitra, there's
Yeah.
plenty of writing on this. You see what happened after the Second World War. There was a lot of writing that came out from people, etc. There, and these because they've had faced two great problems there. The loss of their incomes, etc., which they had in the 20s and the 30s, and then the loss of lives of friends, family, and also of women being able to take up jobs which were never considered there. So this brought up in a big change in people's lives, and that's why the good quality writing in literature, I always felt, was post the Second World War, really came up to me. Moini, she's in a different area than that.
No, I was just saying there's lots and lots of literature, about people who came back from the war and how they managed to re-enter the mainstream that they'd left. And
Yeah.
it's been taken over after all, like women, as Satish said, women had taken over a lot of jobs.
Yeah.
Side of the coin is the feminist story where women had to retreat. They had to give up everything.
Yeah.
Yes.
All the things they had learned, they had
Yes,
to give
yes.
up and hand it back to the men. And then, you had all that advertising in America about my wash is whiter than yours. That rubbish that came in at that point, right? Betty Friedan, the feminine mystique, all those things. Then there are movies like American Sniper, which is fairly recent, where this guy, has got used to just shooting and killing, and that's a good thing. But then you come back to civilian life, and that is not a good thing, and that is not the thing you're supposed to do. What about Rocky? Rocky is all about that, isn't it? This guy who comes back from the war and get back to that civilian persona. There's lots of examples, lots and lots.
Yeah.
Yes, other people, please chime in. Yes.
I think
Latika has her
also,
hand in.
Latika has a question.
So does Indu after Latika.
Everyone.
Okay, I'll ask a simple one.
Raise your hand and we'll get in touch with you immediately. Okay?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Latika.
Yeah, well presented, Mukul. Congratulations.
Thank you.
I
Latika.
want to ask you that one thing in the story which you mentioned.
Sorry. Can you come again with the name of the person? Or did you say?
I haven't spoken.
No. What was that word?
One thing in the story which you mentioned, I want to know how important it was. The death of Rani. Rani is an important person
Yeah,
and she dies. And we learn
yes,
that she dies having fallen into a well.
correct.
We do not know if it was an accident or whether it was suicide.
Yeah.
Huh? How important is it to you to know this? Was it right for the writer to leave this ambiguous, or should he have clarified it? That is what.
No, yeah, Latika, I thought about it, I unfortunately concentrated much more on the fact that she reconciled her two worlds. But even he has left it open-ended. Did she slip deliberately? So as at one point I said by accident or design. So whether she really chose to fall or whether her fall was a blessing for her. No, I wouldn't really be able to give a straight answer in that. She could have fallen because she goes there at night. And then her granddaughter comes and, with a torch and says, oh, she hasn't come back. What happened? And then the others come and then they find her with a broken neck at in the well. So she could have probably chosen that time to go there and to jump. Or she could have also accident. Yeah. And why did she have to go to draw water or whatever at night? This came to me, but and it is, I think, a very important fact in the book. But I just looked at the whole thing. I didn't. Yeah.
I'll just quickly say this.
Yes.
That when something is left open, when it's not tied up and sewn up and made very clear, it is more memorable.
Yes, I was about to say that.
Yeah, this is a death that you will not
I'm sure
forget.
Latika also agrees, but she asked a very, I think it's a good question.
Very good question. Very good question.
May I ask one last one? Okay, I would ask another one. The story is what he remembers. These are his memories, everything passing through his mind. So obviously there is a beginning, middle, and end in it. I don't know. Do you feel that the character changes over time as thoughts come to him and he mulls over them and tells you the story? Do you think he's a different man from the time he started to the time he ended? Is there an evolution of character?
I wouldn't say that. He's just in different circumstances. As he thinks, he was thinking of different things. And when he got there and saw everything, and as I said, he was looking at a funeral for the first time, and he was very happy with the relationship between Rani and his grandmother. So I think he had it in him. It just had to be explored. That's what I think. But every take is, you're welcome to. Yeah, because he felt in the JNU, he hadn't given these things much thought. That's why he was naive. He was looking at the war. Of course, he felt bad. I'm not participating to help my people, but I'm very much involved with this girl. And then when she is the catalyst to egg him to go away, and probably at the beginning he wasn't very happy, but then his sort of guilt starts diminishing. Is what
I think. I'm going to ask Indu to say something. Indu, but raised her hand.
We enjoyed the presentation and
Thank
it
you.
reminded me of stream of consciousness writing of Virginia Woolf, of James Joyce, the same way in which the mind moves, and particularly Mrs. Dalloway, in which she remembers each character and the traumatic experiences of those characters. And all the time she's just traveling to make a dinner party. So this Mrs. Dalloway novel comes close somewhere, and it has, I've got echoes in my head about how you went through the details of it and how this young man, then in a sense, I think finds himself. I think he finds himself. From the way you have
Should I just leave it?
analyzed it.
Thank you, Indu. Thank you.
Yeah,
I said that there. That how does he know? Even in the book as a character, Krishan, how does he know the minds of women? That struck me as something. Appamma's mind, Rani's mind. How does he know Anjum's mind? Especially the grandmother's mind. How does he know? And if you look at Anuk Arudpragasam, he's only 34 years old. So, at that age, to be able to, analyze it so well. I just found that fabulous. Yes, please, Mr. Kulkarni. You were saying something.
It was a wonderful presentation.
Thank you.
Because I could get into this guy's mind, through your bringing it out.
Yeah.
And what I found is the very detailed thinking and imagery at every point, and
Yes.
the role of guilt in your thinking, And because this is my personal experience, suddenly in the middle of the night, some dream will come about what I did in the past and why did I do it. And this, then you try to, and it is also related to context,
Yes.
If you're working, it's different. When I'm retired as of now, your thoughts are very different. I've come back to my town where I grew up, Belgaum. Now my thinking is extremely different. So the context also matters to how you think about things.
Absolutely, yeah. And also, I think this whole guilt process for him, in a sense, that coming there, what he called destiny and fate, coming for the funeral, that then I would say put an end to that guilt, because he could not participate in the war. He had paid to do a course at the JNU. He was doing his PhD or something like that, and he was pursuing that. But ever since his girlfriend points him to do something else, that just don't be involved with me, go do something for yourself, and then he finds his ability to, and he's drawn towards the Northeast. And then this whole funeral, because their Rani is a victim in a sense, so probably in that he sees her son, whom he didn't know, was killed, and the other sons, I would say, and there, having come for her funeral, maybe he sees that he has done some service to the war. Maybe I could be well off the mark, but that's how I thought it was.
Dr.
Wonderful
Arudpragasam
presentation.
had something to say.
Yeah, just a small comment. What I loved was the description and the imagery of the seashore.
Yes.
Where
Yes.
the wave moves, because it's incredibly beautifully described.
Very beautiful. Yes.
The average ecologist or the average person who understands the environment would never be able to say this.
See?
And that's what the living wave means.
Yes, yes.
As it comes up the shore and it disappears back and it goes. And that's the dynamics of the living shore.
Absolutely,
And
absolutely.
that's extremely beautifully said. I mean, it is perfect.
Yeah, I could have actually picked on many more such descriptions. They're beautiful. The whole book is full of such things. But I didn't want to. It was a hard job for me to pick and choose, So, because that's what I...
It was
Dr. Bharucha,
Thank you.
it's so beautiful to watch the ocean go in and out, etc. There's a series, you have a feeling of calmness with you when you watch that. I always felt that watching the oceans in and out movement is better than any other meditation you could think of, because it goes there and back, and there's nothing that you can see that is making it go up and down.
Yeah.
Okay, let me not talk and go ahead. I wanted someone else. Kusum is there. 1 minute. What were you saying? Go ahead.
Yeah, I just had one thing. I would not be able to, as I said in the last line, that this book gave us words loaded with imagery and meaning, beauty and strength, which is what I looked for and I got. I would not be able to review another book just like that. I can't do a story that doesn't mean anything to me. It has to touch me somewhere. And probably the fact that it touched me maybe in some way came out in the review, because I can't do a book on banking or finance or just something that, or even otherwise, if it's just a murder mystery, also probably not. So the way I'm made is the way, is the reason I picked this book, and I was able to.
Okay. Now the next person I'm calling in is Uma. Uma, where are you?
Mukul, until Uma comes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm here. I'm very much
How
here.
Uma's
did
there.
you come to
Good
the
evening.
book?
I have just put up a comment. Ma'am, it was really very good. I could just, feel that story, the way his mind was moving, the way, what he felt, what he thought, everything from
Yeah,
your
thank you, Uma.
presentation.
That
I
was
could,
my purpose actually, because it
yes,
touched me. So I hope that doing the review, it touched
I really
all of
enjoyed your
you.
review.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Yes, Moini, you can come in there.
I was just asking, how did you find the book? I mean, what led you to it?
No, Satish sometime back had sent us a list of, I'm sorry? Oh, you're asking me, Moini?
No, I just said, is it a chance encounter or did you?
No, I'm just going to explain
Yes.
that. Satish had sent us a list of books that would probably be last year's book team. There were quite a few. And then I went and read little blurbs on them, and somehow I liked this one because I like
the sound.
journeys of the mind. As I said, I don't like large stories, many characters and hustle bustle. No, this was a meditative book. But then I didn't go on to the reviews. I just picked it up myself. I bought it, and yeah, I thought it was a good buy.
Okay. Kaveri, you're somewhere there.
Latika wants to say something.
1 minute. Kaveri was there and she was half raised a hand somewhere. Yeah, there you are. After Kaveri is Latika.
No, we can't hear Kaveri.
Kaveri,
you're muted.
Okay, you
Yeah.
hear me now? Yeah. So it was really so absorbing to listen to Mukul.
Thank you.
She somehow sort of involved us so beautifully in this strange kind of, it was like an exploration of meaning in his life. That's the way I got it. And I noticed you had mentioned that he left his girlfriend. He was not touched by the departure. It was like there was a process of, he seemed to not be in touch with his emotions. He was kind of alienated from himself, and he makes this journey north. And it's astonishing that the characters are only women. They are the life force of the world, I think. And it's women. And, one or two descriptions about his grandmother. I see it in my mother as well, how as she grows older, she goes to sleep very often during the day. Those are so authentic.
Yes, very much.
A life of, a tragic event that she just could not, I suppose, reconcile to. And she lived for as long as she could. And then she gave up her life.
Yeah.
That's the way I would see it. And it seems fanciful, but the well to me almost seems like you're going back to the womb. You want to leave.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I'd just like to add something small. What Kaveri said triggered something in my mind. When the mother, Krishan's mother and Krishan together tell the grandmother about Rani's passing away, she shows no emotion. So they turn back, they sit with her for a while, then they turn back and Krishan goes to doing what he had to do and the mother does. But sometime later, when the mother tells him, when Krishan has gone for the funeral, she calls him up and she said, Appamma has been crying the whole day. She can't just get over it. So it came as a little late reaction, but there it was, because that's how she reacted. They were really very attached to each other, and they laughed and they talked and things like that. Yeah.
Oh, I was wondering about this. How did the grandmother take the death of that companion?
Yeah, this is how
I was wondering about it.
Yeah, because she didn't react when they told him. She just sat. So the two of them looked at each other, the mother and son. They sat with her for a while and then they went away. And then as he is traveling north, he gets a phone call from his mother. And he says, grandmother is, Appamma is completely inconsolable. She's been crying and crying, and, says she's been missing her. In fact, saying very little, but just hysterically crying. So that was it.
There are two other people who would like to say something, Uma and then Farooq. Go ahead, Uma. Uma, are you there?
Yeah, I'm there. Yeah, as I said, I enjoyed it very much, and I really felt the emotion in the story.
Yeah.
I don't have any more questions to ask as such.
Okay, okay. Farooq, you're next.
Yeah, Mukul, very nice presentation.
Thank
And
you, Farooq.
there's one thing that missed out in my understanding was that this old lady had gone to London to meet her brother.
That's correct.
Came back very sad, thin. What exactly happened in London that this thing happened to her?
It was, yeah, we don't know. It was just aging. Actually, she was aging, and the daughter-in-law, that is Krishan's mother, and Krishan felt that she shouldn't go. She can't handle it. She's 85 already. But she felt that if you all say no to me, he is my only person, my brother. So I have to go. And she didn't feel that she was in any shape to go, but she went. And there, they don't tell us what happened. The brother just calls to say she can't handle things.
There are
and she has to come back.
a lot of situations where the explanation is not complete.
Yes.
Like this one, and then whether she died or of an accident, or whether somebody pushed her, or
that's what Latika
that we don't know.
Yeah, it's
And
left
also about his relationship with that girlfriend, ex-girlfriend.
That is a little clear. As I said, she was an activist, a student, and as an activist, she was in Jharkhand. So she didn't want him just to be stuck to her as a lover, you know, which was what was happening. She wanted him also to be doing something else. So she points him to the fact that go look for some purpose for yourself. And he was an intelligent person, so she points him that way. And Farooqji's question about what happened to her there. So this entire, to my mind, this entire anticipation of going to London was much more than she could handle. She should have remained in one place, but she wanted to prove it. My brother, he wants me. Y'all don't come in the way to stop this. And there she visibly, in a non-familiar environment, visibly deteriorated. So much so that he couldn't handle. He lived alone. He was a bachelor. And he owned a supermarket. He had run away from Sri Lanka at the time of the civil war, and or even earlier. And he wanted his sister to come because he felt that she was like a mother. She brought him up, so he could do this for her. So she could talk about it. She would always talk about it earlier to people, saying, "Oh, he did this for me and he bought that for me." But this trip was different. She had actually physically and mentally suffered. And interestingly, she didn't want to admit that when she came back.
She wanted to have closure in going to London to meet her brother. But
yes.
Apparently she got disappointed maybe, or, you know, she just sort of, why did she physically become weak? Something must, anyway, it's just a...
She becomes, I would know there's a one-way explanation or, you know, something she becomes very disoriented. She becomes thin, very disoriented, and she's fighting to still stay relevant in this world and trying to tell her daughter-in-law, no, I don't really need you. Though she knows somewhere at the back of her mind that actually she'll need her daughter-in-law more now that Rani has died, you know.
Oh, okay. I think about the last question to come through. Anyone else?
Kaveri has raised her hand.
Who, Kaveri?
Yes.
Yeah, if it's okay, I'll just quickly, The Deer Hunter was really a film about people who survived the war. And that was really an astonishing film, which stayed with me for a long time. But, you know, I had some sort of flashes of connection with Sophie's Choice, where she loses her 2 children. And she just couldn't cope with her life after that. This, of course, was presented in a very different way.
Yes.
Presented in a very different way. But basically, she was in mourning all the time for her 2 children.
Yeah,
so
she was like a ghost in this world, and she wanted to go to some other world, but didn't know how. Yeah. I think Latika had something. Or probably Sheena.
Latika, where are you?
Maybe she's left. Yeah, maybe.
Oh, okay. Anyone else got queries, questions?
Sheena? Yes, Sheena, please.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, first of all, a beautiful presentation. Everybody has said so. I love the different layers that you brought together into the story, because I have read the book, so I have been able to relive it. I like one part very much where the grandmother was, I think, shocked to hear about Rani's death. And then she went through these stages where first she was shocked, and then she was silent, and then she became inconsolable. But then she had the presence of mind to remove her 15,000 rupees savings and send it to Rani's daughter, which I thought was such a nice gesture on her part. Nobody else thought of that.
She gave him 20,000 rupees to cover the funeral expenses.
Her savings,
to her grandson. And in fact, he expresses surprise. He says, I didn't even know my grandmother knew how to withdraw money or keep money and keep a track of them. Apparently, she has a small pension and she keeps this money from there.
From the father, from the husband.
Before I close up,
maybe, I don't know.
I see some other faces that I never have asked questions. Pradeep Pethe, Shilpa Gokhale, would you like to join in?
And Urmila.
And Urmila and Ashwin.
Gautam is there also.
Please, Gautam.
Well,
Shilpa.
I joined it. Yes, I did join in a bit late. Your presentation, Mukul, was beautiful. I haven't read the book. I think I should. There's some glare. So I really don't have anything more to add, except that I know, being an army background, it relates to the story in Sri Lanka. So this lady told me because her husband, along with his regiment, went to Sri Lanka. And I'm sharing this because it is also considering of what happens to women who are left behind. She said every night we dreaded whose house is going to get a knock and what message we're going to get.
Yeah.
You see, this is reality for us.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And that's what you reminded me of. It was beautiful, Mukul.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Shilpa. Okay, anyone else?
Would Urmila like to say something?
I'm trying to switch on my video, but I don't have Wi-Fi here. So excuse that, it will suddenly start.
Urmila, your video audio is on.
Anyway,
Oh,
audio
is
is
it?
working, so please continue.
Okay, I thought it's just circle buffering. Okay, no, I definitely like the. I always like the pains that Mukul takes in researching the whole thing very well and then preparing the whole.
Urmila, you're all gone off.
We lost her. Okay. What about Pradeep Pethe?
Pethe, where are you? Pradeep?
Maybe Urmila can just ask on the audio if she wants, unless Pradeep wants to say something.
Pradeep, Urmila, waiting for both of you to say something.
Yeah, Urmila could write something in the chat box if she's lost sound.
Yeah.
Gautam, what about you?
Sorry, I just joined in as usual. This Sunday evening, I just got up, so I'm extremely sorry, Mukul.
Oh, it's morning. It's Sunday morning now.
Oh, yeah, but it's for me, it's, like you said, every time it happens like this. I'm extremely sorry.
No problem.
Okay,
No problem.
okay. What about Ashwin?
Ashwin, you're being very quiet. I think we got enough.
Okay, let's wind up. Now, I thought excellent presentation, very stimulating. The novel clearly has much in it to ponder, to consider, to wonder about. And so I think such books are delightful because they stay with you, they keep you thinking, and they are unforgettable. So excellent, super choice. I'm so glad my dear husband was the one who suggested the book. How nice to know that. And that's a great pick, Mukul, excellent indeed. So thank you very much, Mukul, for doing this. And thank you everyone who came. Now, next Sunday, we have a young presenter, Amanda Kongwir, who is going to talk about a Korean novel. Well, Min Jin Lee is the name of the author. I gather she's an American Korean, but it's about Korean life. And I gather that it has just been made into a series, a serial, which is going to be streamed soon. but after this presentation. I think it's starting up at the end of March, possibly. But clearly, therefore, it is a novel that has been noticed. It has been noticed, it has been thought worthy of adapting to the screen. So we look forward to that. And very appropriately, since it's Women's Day on the 8th of March, this is a novel by a woman writer. Then on the 13th of March, we have Monali Chatterjee. And I'm so grateful to Monali for responding to that plea of mine, to present movies by Satyajit Ray, because he's so iconic. His movies are so marvelous. And she already did Ghare Baire with us. And now she's going to do Gupi Gayan Bagha Bayan, which apparently is a movie made for children, but clearly has more to it than just that. And it is easily available on YouTube, I gather, which is why she chose it. So we look forward to that. On the 20th of March,
19th of March, we got Dr.
20th. Oh, okay.
19th of March, we got Dr. Erij Bharucha's book will be discussed on the other, but part of book reading only, I would consider.
Part of Gyan Other, yes.
Yeah. So it will be a joint program, Mohini. I would like to, what we would planning, Satish,
combined,
a joint program of Gyanpedia and book club, because it's the launch of a book and also it's about
absolutely. You would be very proud to be associated.
I'm including in this the environment people too, environment people, some of the birdies, etc. We have a multiple level of people.
Audience, yes. Then on the 20th of March, we have Sheena Shahani presenting And the Mountains Echoed by Khalid Hussain. Yes, 27th March, Anindya Mukherjee, Strange Alliances by Manu Pillai, and we hope Manu Pillai will join us in that session. So that's all for today. Thank you very much, Mukul. Thank you everyone who participated. I would love to thank Latika, if only she were here, because she asked very pertinent questions that led the discussion. So thank you, everybody, and see you on...
Farooq?
Yes, Farooq, over to you.
Yeah. So just wanted to tell people that on the 12th, we have a program called the Watermen of the Railways. Dr. Ajay Singh will be there, and he'll be speaking on water and how water conservation they have done in the wheel and axle factory in Bangalore. And he's now doing a very big project in Hubli. So it's a program on Gyanpedia, which we'll be doing. And on 19th, as Satish talked about, Dr. Erij Bharucha. Then on the 26th, we have a program from Portland. One gentleman, Bhavesh, is going to speak from Portland. He has made a 12-inch telescope himself. He'll be talking about telescopes and cosmology. All new subjects to me, but there are many people in our audience, in Gyanpedia audience, in Guldasta audience, in all over this who like to talk about nature and astronomy and things like that. So this is what we have. And Nasima is still thinking about what to bring to the table under Guldasta Urdu. So that's a challenge for her. Anyway, so shall I close the program with your permission, everybody?
Yes.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
See you at the next program.